Hello art friends, Melisa here. Today I'm sharing an art journal entry in my 8x8 Arteza art journal using products by Marta. Marta designs and sells paper, stamps, and stencils. You can watch her how-to videos over on her channel, Maremi Small Art. She also has an online store by the same name. The florals on this layout are from the Antiquario Rice Paper Set number 2. The frame, quote, and butterflies are from the Antiquario Rice Paper Set number 4. I'll also be using her broken mandala stencil and her text stamp set. And as always, you can find a list of the supplies in the description box below the video. Just click the Show More button and it will expand. I started on a background I'd already played on, deciding where to place my focal points. Then I added torn pieces of book paper from a Chinese dictionary and a college algebra book I'd purchased at a used bookstore. I also added parts of an old planner. I'm going to adhere all of that down with some matte medium. Next, I started adding white acrylic paint to blend the paper into the background as well as soften the edges. I started with a small 1.5 inch roller and then moved on to a palette knife. You can skip to approximately 2 minutes 30 seconds if you want to see me start the next step. I won't be talking until then. Now it's time to start adding paint. I was trying to mix a color that would match the center of the flowers. I started with Golden's Titan Mars Pale and then added Naphthol Red Light. I tried adding a little gray to see if that would change the hue, but I didn't like how it turned out, so I just went back to adding more of the first two colors together. If you don't want to watch me mix the paint, you can skip ahead to 3 minutes 40 seconds for the next step. Time to start stenciling, and I'm going to use Marta's broken mandala stencil at this point. The next step starts at 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This background is nowhere near ready for the focal points, but I like to bring them back onto the page throughout the process. I love the distressed look of the mandala pattern, but it's too clean looking and the rest of the background is too white. So it's time to add some more paint, and this time I'm going to use my fingers. I'm mixing some white paint with the Golden's Titan Mars Pale to try to match the color on the outside of the petals. When I added the paint directly from the tube, it was a little too orange. I started by mixing some white with the Titan Mars Pale, but there was just a little bit of that coral color still left on my palette knife from earlier. So happy accident, it made the color a little less orange and a little more pink. When I went to rub the peach color, some of the coral smeared and it mixed with it, and I immediately realized I wanted that look. I started spraying water to help the paint spread and blend a little. It also kept the paint wet long enough for me to dab some back off with a paper towel when needed. Keep in mind, if your paint is already completely dried, you can use alcohol. The next step begins at 6 minutes 20 seconds. The next step is to add some more white paint. I started with gesso, but it wasn't really covering like I wanted to, so pretty quickly I'm going to switch to the Liquitex heavy bodied acrylic paint in white. I know it seems a little redundant. I add white, add color, then add more white. But that process is what builds up layers and adds depth. While doing all of that, I try to make sure some of the first collage layer is peeking through as well. And if I apply too much paint and realize I can't see the collage paper, I just wipe some off real quick. Usually when I've heard other crafters speak about distressing the edges of something, they're adding black or brown, but I like to distress with white. So I'm going to end up adding white around the edges of both of these pages as well. I really wanted to add some gray into this color combo, so I started by tapping some on with my finger to test it out. I knew the area I was tapping it on would be covered by the florals, so no worries if I didn't like it. Then I laid the frame and the butterfly beside it and really liked it. I searched for another stencil pattern that I thought would look good with the broken mandala. I started with polka dots and it was okay. But then I found a leafy flourish stencil I'd bought at Hobby Lobby. And you're going to see in a minute, that works out much better. So here's some close-ups of where it is at this point and how all the layers are coming together. So what do you think? One of the things you could do is lay the focal points back on top of this and see how they look with the background. But immediately to me, it felt like the gray was separated from the broken mandalas. And I wished I had thought of the gray before I put that pattern on the page, and then they would seem like they flowed together better. And after laying the focal points back on top of the layout, I decided that I needed more of that pink color over the gray. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you've seen me do this where I add one color with the stencil and then I go right back over it with another shade, and it kind of gives it more of a distressed look and integrates it better into the background. And you end up being able to see both colors. So take a mental picture and let me know what you think. Did it look good with just the gray, or does it look better after I add the pink on top of the gray? And remember, if you try this, if I ended up adding too much pink, I could always go back over with a little more gray until I get that distressed two-tone look that I'm looking for. So when I do this, I usually don't have as much paint on my sponge because I'm not trying to completely cover up the first color. You can always add more, but it's harder to take the paint off. Now I'm testing out some golden titanium white fluid acrylic. It's a lot thinner than regular acrylic paint, and I wanted to see if I could get some drips and splatters going with it. It's a little transparent too, so it won't completely cover the great pattern I've got going. I'm going to keep doing this process over and over again until I get a look that I like, and then I'm going to start doing the splatters. And if you want to skip ahead, that's going to happen at about 12 minutes, 20 seconds. I was loading my brush with a lot of water and then just trying to pick up some of the paint off the side of the top. I think I ended up putting a little bit in a bowl though and adding water and doing it that way as well. And now I am finally loving this background and I'm ready to add my focal points on. I decided the frame would look more interesting if it didn't show the background from behind, if it had something else in it. So I started out by making it white and then decided to use Marta's text stamp to add some interest. I decided to try stamping directly on the page using some India ink, knowing that I haven't always gotten successful results doing this, and I should have placed something firm underneath it before stamping. This was a brand new stamp, so the other thing I should have done was to ink it up and stamp it on a piece of scrap paper a few times. Sometimes new stamps, especially clear ones, have some kind of residue on them, and they stamp better when they're dirty and have been used a few times. So now I'm going to need to fix this. So I try lining it up again and placing something firm underneath it, but I didn't get it completely lined up. I ended up pouncing on gesso over the part of the image that extended past the frame, placing the flower and butterfly back over it and reassessing. And this probably would have been fine for almost everyone else but me, but I'm a little OCD. So I decided to trim a piece of paper the size of the frame, stamp the image on that, distress it with some gesso, and then adhere that under the frame and over my mess up. Next, I wanted to layer some black in the background using the decorative part of the stamp set and then the text part. I don't want a clean image this time. I want it to look distressed. And where it's too dark and looks too perfect, I'm going to distress it with some white acrylic paint and knock it back a little bit. Another way to get a partial image is by inking it up, stamping some of the ink off on some scrap paper and then stamping it on your project. At this point, I've stamped the flourish design and pieces of the text, and I'm adding white paint to distress it. Notice how only small parts of the text image is on the layout. I got that look by not using a stamp block. I inked up the image and then used only my fingers to press certain parts of the image on the page. I used matte medium to adhere down most of the rice paper images. I used adhesive foam tape to pop up the butterfly wings to give them more of a 3D look. And the last step was to use a Stabilo All Pencil to add some shadows around the edges of the frame, butterflies, and florals. You just use the pencil to add lines around the edges, and then a wet brush to activate it and smear the lines. And that adds your shadows. If it ends up being too dark, just use a paper towel to blot it off. Hopefully you can see the difference in these close-ups. That wraps up today's video. I hope you were inspired. Don't forget to check the description box below the video. Just click the Show More button for links to supplies and more information. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd appreciate you giving it a thumbs up and leaving me a quick comment. It's an encouragement to me and it helps me to grow my channel. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.